Good morning, Pastor Matthew, Hollywood United Methodist Church. Merry Christmas Eve, y'all, as we are, you see that I'm here in our sanctuary. I'll be hanging out here for the most part of today. Right now I'm getting ready for our wonderful, wonderful family service that will start at 4 o'clock, the countdown to Christmas. You can see right there, the countdown to Christmas. It's going to be a lot of fun. But we've got a few chapters to get through, too. And as I said last night, since we are gathering for Christmas today, whether it's at 4, 7, or 11, maybe all three, Christmas is on our mind. And so I want to try to see if there's anything. Maybe the answer is no. I had something yesterday that came out to me, but let's just see what Christmassy stuff might come to mind as we read some stuff that we would think is pretty un-Christmassy. We left Jesus where he had been before the chief priests and the like, and so now he's going before Pilate. And so let's read. Then the whole assembly rose up and brought him before Pilate. They began to accuse him, saying, "We found this man subverting our ethnic group, forbidding us to pay taxes to Caesar, and saying that he himself is Christ, a king." So Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "So you say." Then Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowd, "I find no basis for a charge against this man." But they kept insisting. "He stirs up the people, teaching throughout all of Judea, starting in Galilee all the way here." But when Pilate heard this, he asked if the man was a Galilean. When he found out that Jesus was under Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem at that time. Now Herod was very pleased when he saw Jesus, because he had wanted to see him for a long time. He had been hearing about him, and he was hoping to see him perform a miracle. So he accosted him with many questions, but Jesus gave no response. The chief priests and the scribes were standing there, vehemently accusing him. Herod, with his soldiers, humiliated and mocked him, dressed him in a sumptuous robe, and sent him back to Pilate. That day Herod and Pilate became friends. Before that, they had been enemies. Pilate called together the chief priests, the rulers, and the people, and said to them, "Y'all brought this man to me as someone who misleads the people. When I examined him before y'all, I found nothing in this man causative of what y'all accuse him. Neither has Herod, for he sent him back to us. As you can see, he has done nothing worthy of death. Therefore I will punish him, and then release him." But the crowd shouted, "Away with this man! Release to us Barabbas!" Barabbas had been thrown into prison for an insurrection in the city and for murder. Again, Pilate addressed them, wanting to release Jesus, but they kept shouting, "Crucify, crucify him." A third time he said to them, "Why? What wrong has this man done? I have found in him no grounds for the death penalty. Therefore I will have him punished and then release him." But they were insistent, demanding with loud voices that he might be crucified, and their voices prevailed. So Pilate decided to grant what they demanded. He released the man who had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder, the one they begged for, and handed over Jesus to their will. As they led him away, they seized Simon of Cyrene, who was coming in from the country, and they laid the cross on him to carry it behind Jesus. A large crowd of the people followed him, including women who were mourning and lamenting. But Jesus turned toward them and said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, y'all must not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and for y'all's children. Look, the days are coming when they will say, 'Blessed are the barren women, the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed.' Then they will begin to tell the mountains, 'Y'all fall on us,' and tell the hills, 'Y'all cover us.' For if they do these things when wood is wet, what will happen when it is dry?" 2 others who were criminals were also led to be executed with him. When they came to the place that is called the Skull, they crucified him there along with the criminals, one on the right and one on the left. Then Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." And they divided up his garments among them by casting lots. The people stood by watching, but the rulers ridiculed him, saying, "He saved others, let him save himself, if this is the Christ of God, his chosen one." The soldiers also mocked him. They came to him and offered him wine vinegar, saying, "If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself." There was also an inscription above him, "This is the King of the Jews." One of the criminals who was hanging there began to vilify him. "Aren't you the Christ? Save yourself and us." But the other answered, rebuking him, Don't you even fear God, seeing you are under the same judgment? Surely we are punished justly, getting what we deserve for our actions. But this man has done nothing wrong. Then he said, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus said to him, Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise. It was about noon, and darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m, because the sun's light failed, and the veil of the temple was torn down the middle. Jesus cried out with a loud voice, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. Having said this, he breathed his last. When the centurion saw what had happened, he glorified God, saying, Certainly this was a righteous man. When all the crowds who had gathered for the spectacle had seen what had happened, they returned home beating their chests. But all who knew him, including the women who followed him from Galilee, stood at a distance, seeing these things. Now there was a man named Joseph, a member of the council, a good and righteous man, who had not consented to their plan and action. He was from Arimathea, a city of the Jews, and he was waiting for the empire of God. He went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then he took it down, wrapped it in a linen cloth, and placed him in a tomb that was cut into stone, where no one had ever been laid. It was the day of their preparation, and the Sabbath was about to begin. The women who had come with him out of Galilee followed, and they saw the tomb and how his body was placed. They returned home and prepared spices and perfumes, and they rested on the Sabbath according to the commandment. This is the word of God for us and for many, the people of God. Thanks be to God. I have to say, I actually have found some interesting connections with the Christmas story. Both the story that we will read and talk about at 4, 7, and 11, but also something we talked about this past Sunday. So this past Sunday, we had the story from Matthew. This is Luke from Matthew, with Joseph finding out Mary's pregnant, and because he was righteous and did not want to put Mary to shame and stuff, he was going to quietly divorce her. That righteous thing is interesting because right here we see that a couple times. Joseph of Arimathea is called righteous, same word there. And Jesus, when the centurion at the cross, when he sees Jesus die, this was a righteous man. It's interesting then to think about righteousness, talking about in Joseph, and righteousness here, talking about somebody like Joseph of Arimathea, and of course, like Christ. But what I'm most drawn to from a Christmas perspective, something that definitely we will talk about tonight, is I think of the shepherds. I've been thinking a lot of the shepherds this past week, who are called and are the first to see the Christ child. And how they were, they were just working, right? They weren't like looking for him. You compare that to the Magi at Epiphany. They came, they'd been studying the stars, they've been looking for this, they see it and they go. The shepherds kind of get called out of their normal day. Simon of Cyrene here, in a similar situation. It is not, by all accounts, what we know of Simon of Cyrene is he did not even go out to the crucifixion, right? He was not a disciple of Jesus. He was not one of those ones who wanted to see him killed. He was not, it didn't even seem, let me read it, find it exactly again. It doesn't even say he was like, people would occasionally just go out to public executions. No, he's just traveling in through the country. He's been on business. And yet somehow he gets brought in. Now, of course, the shepherds are brought in by the angelic chorus, and he's brought in by Rome. But it's just this interesting thing to think about, that these people, both at the beginning of Jesus and really the last, I guess the criminals are the last, but one of the last people to really come into contact with Jesus before his death is somebody who did not intend to be anything to do with Jesus, and yet somehow gets brought. And one of the things we know later on is that he does become a follower, and certainly his children at the very least. Paul talks about Simon's children. So that's something to think about. And we'll be talking about that at 7 o'clock quite a bit. So that is chapter 23. Come back right around 2 to 3 o'clock, and we will finish off Luke. And then, of course, remember for 4, 7, and 11, we have our services today. But It is a joyous day, and I hope to see you at one or more of the services this evening. See y'all.